The Senate will come to order. Members, please stand for the prayer. Today I ask members to pause for a moment of silent prayer and reflection. And following the silent prayer and reflection, please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. The Secretary will take the roll.
Senators Abler, Anderson B., Anderson P., Bach, Benson, Bigham, Carlson, Chamberlain, Champion, Clausen, Cohen, Swazinski, Dames, Dibble, Draheim, Dietzick, Eaton, Eichhorn, Eakin, Franz, Frenz, Gazelka, Goggin, Hall, Herr, Hayden, Hoffman, Housley, Howe, Ingebrigtsen, Isaacson, Jasinski, Jensen, Johnson, Kent, Kiffmeyer, Klein, Coran, Lane, Lang, Latz, Limmer, Little, Marty, Matthews, Miller, Nelson, Newman, Newton, Osmick, Pappas, Pratt, Rarick, Ralph, Rest, Rosen, Rude, Senjum, Simonson, Sparks, Thomasoni, Torres, Ray, Utke, Weber, Westrom, Uyghur, Wickland.
A quorum is present. Pursuant to Rule 14.1, the following members intend to vote under Rule 40.7. Senators Anderson B., Carlson, Chamberlain, Clausen, Dames, Eaton, Eichhorn, Frentz, Ingebrigtsen, Isaacson, Klein, Lane, Latz, Little, Newman, Newton, Pratt, Rest, Rosen, Senjum, Sparks, Torres Ray, Westrom, and Wickland. Members will begin on the Senate agenda today with the second order of business, executive and official communications. Please make note of the communications that were received. They are listed in the agenda. There's no further action required on that order of business. The next order of business is the third order of business, messages from the House. The Secretary will read the message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce the passage by the House of the following House file herewith transmitted. House File Number 4415. Patrick D. Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
There's no action required on that message. Moving to the fourth order of business, first reading of House bills. The House file listed in the agenda will be given its first reading. Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, I move that House File 4415 be laid on the table.
On that motion, all in favor say aye. Opposed say no. We'll take a brief pause to capture the votes of the members in alternate locations. Receiving a sufficient number of aye votes, the motion prevails. Moving to the fifth order of business, reports of committees, Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, I move the committee reports printed in the agenda be adopted.
On the adoption of the committee reports, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, say no. We will take a brief pause to gather the votes of the members in the alternate locations. Receiving a sufficient number of aye votes, the motion prevails. The next item on the agenda is the seventh order of business, second reading of House bills. The Secretary will read the House file number.
House File Number 3429.
Second reading. Moving to the eighth order of business, introduction and first reading of Senate bills. The bills listed in today's introduction calendar, which are Senate File 4562 to 4574, are given their first reading and referred as indicated. Moving to the ninth order of business, motions and resolutions. We have a few authors' motions listed in the agenda. We'll take these authors' motions as one motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, say no. We'll again take a brief pause to gather the votes of the members in the alternate locations. Receiving a sufficient number of aye votes, the motion prevails. Remaining under motions and resolutions, Senator Housley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Senate File 481 be withdrawn from the Committee on State Government Finance and Policy and Elections and returned to its author.
Discussion on the Housley motion. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Again, we will take a brief pause. Receiving a sufficient number of aye votes, the motion prevails. Remaining under motions and resolutions, Senator Gazelka.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pursuant to Rule 26, I designate that the following bills be made for special orders for immediate consideration. Members, the sheet with the four bills is on your desk.
Members, the first bill up for consideration is number 29 on general order, Senate File 3357, Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate File 3357 is a civil law package of bills. There's a number of these provisions in your outline. This bill makes changes to number one, the guardianship and conservatorship laws. Second, it modifies Uniform Transfers to Minors Act. Thirdly, it amends the Minnesota Common Interest Ownership Act and modifies provisions related to garnishment. There's a number of provisions that have been contributed by a variety of our state senators, the first one being Article 1. Pardon me, Mr. President.
Senator
there-
Limmer, do you have an amendment? Do you happen to have an amendment?
That is true, Mr. President. I would offer the A1 amendment. It's a delete everything amendment.
Senator Limmer offers the A1 amendment. The secretary will report the amendment.
Senator Limmer moves to amend Senate File Number 3357 as follows: delete everything after the enacting clause and insert. This is the A1 amendment.
To the amendment, Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Got a little early start. I was wondering what all the quizzical looks were from the front desk. As I was saying, this is a civil law package of a variety of civil law proposals for your consideration. The first article is on guardianship and conservatorship. This was brought to us by Senator Ingebrigtsen. He's not in the chamber today, but he is following the proceedings and will be voting remotely. The language is a result of over 2 years of work by more than 15 different stakeholders, including the judicial branch, lawyers, guardianship practitioners, advocacy organizations, and self-advocacy groups. It represents recommendations from a review in 2017 by the Uniform Law Commission to bring Minnesota's guardianship into the 21st century. I believe it's time to update Minnesota statute to reflect those recommendations that reflect current practices, streamline the guardianship process, and capture cost savings for those under guardianship and conservatorship in our state. The most important provision in Article 1 is a step toward less restrictive alternatives for individuals with disabilities, mental health issues, and older adults, which will ensure that those under guardianship will retain their civil liberties and ownership over important life decisions. It also ensures that our young people will not automatically have a lifetime of guardianship, but will allow periodic checks and check-ins with the courts in their young adult years. Article 2 is an amendment from Senator Johnson. That was Senate File 2914, which was passed on the Senate floor earlier this year. And Senator Johnson should be in the room soon to explain this article. Those recommendations came from the State Bar Association, and this would be the first update in this particular area of law since 1985. I see that Senator Johnson is in the room now, so, Mr. President, I would yield to Senator Johnson.
Further discussion, Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Senate File 2914 is the Uniform Transfer to Minors Act. So back in 1985, this state passed the Uniform Transfers to Minors Act and was revisited only in 2005. What this does is really updates the language to the modern usage. Things like the universal, the investor standard, the new investor standard is used. Also coordinating the ages that minors can access accounts moves to be more unified and uniform in this. Just a nice update that will help benefit the minors that these trust accounts are supposed to benefit. It also will help the custodians and the trust companies to understand exactly what they need to be doing going forward. So with that, Mr. President, thank you.
Further discussion on the bill? Senator Housley?
Mr. President.
Senator Limmer.
Thank you. Before I yield to Senator Housley, she has the next article, Article 3 of the bill, and I would yield to Senator Housley.
Further discussion on the bill, Senator Housley.
Thank you, Mr. President. This article in the bill is Senate File 1706, the wage garnishment modifications. In current law, there is a 70-day period during which a debtor's wages may be garnished after a creditor has obtained a judgment against the debtor. and the debtor has been served with the garnishment papers. This bill would extend that period from 70 days to 90 days so that the creditor could continue garnishing wages for an additional 20 days without having to revisit the court to renew the garnishment until a full 90 days have elapsed. Numerous statutory sections are updated to reflect the new time period, including those on garnishment summons, creditor forms, attachments, statutory forms, earnings disclosure worksheet and form, and multiple earnings garnishments. This bill is in collaboration with the Great Lakes Credit and Collection Association, formerly known as the Minnesota Collectors Association, the Minnesota Creditors' Rights Association, and Legal Aid. This was passed in Judiciary last year, and it was also passed in the Senate in May of last year. 2020, the House added some technical amendments, and the updates in this reflect what the technical changes. Thank you, Mr. President and Senator Limmer.
Further discussion on the A1 amendment? Seeing none, we have the A1 amendment in front of us. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. We'll take a brief pause to gather the votes of the members voting from alternate locations. Receiving a sufficient number of aye votes, the motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. Members, we're back on Senate File 3357 as amended. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the Secretary will give Senate File 3357 its third reading.
Senate File number 3357.
Third reading. Members, final discussion on the bill? Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. One portion of Article 3 that was not discussed on the floor today was Senator Johnson's proposal to address the issue of common interest communities. These are homeowner associations for condominiums and townhomes. Some of the early contracts that were written required a 100% participation and passage of any changes to those, and this would reflect allowing the courts to be involved to allow for a little less stringent requirement. Basically, it's almost impossible to get 100% of a very large condominium association together to pass anything in one full agreement. So this makes a special provision for that. I wanted the body to know that that also was included. I also, before we have vote, all four of the caucuses have agreed to the merits of this particular civil law package. And I would like to thank not only the senators that involved themselves with specific contributions in this bill, Senator Ingebrigtsen, Senator Johnson, and Senator Housley. I would like to offer a double thanks to Senator Latz, who helped contribute and helped finish off some of the finer points in this bill. And the reason why I say double thanks is because I omitted him the last time we met on the data privacy bill, and he certainly deserves credit for his contributions in that as well. We also have some staff. This particular bill is very complex. It doesn't appear that way on first glance, but it's very difficult to get all sorts of stakeholders and advocates in the room, as well as others that had concerns. Priya Premo, our nonpartisan Senate counsel, was involved. Linnea Michelson, Senate Research, Senate Republican Caucus Research. Angela Cook, our commissioner, or not commissioner, I'm giving her a promotion, committee administrator. And Jackie Clinton, DFL researcher, as well as our committee legislative assistant, Carissa Benson. I stand for any further questions, Mr. President.
Members, any final discussion? We are on final passage of Senate File 3357 as amended. Seeing no further discussion, the Secretary will take the roll. Members in the retiring room, please come to the chamber and vote. Retiring room. Members in room 303, please make your way down to the chamber to vote. While they're on their way down, members in the President's office, please come to the chamber and vote. Members in room 323, please come down to the chamber to vote. While they're on their way down, members in room 237, please come to the chamber and vote. Members in room 206, please come to the chamber and vote. I will now call on Senator Kent to report the votes of those members voting under Rule 40.7. Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report aye for Senator Carlson.
Senator Carlson votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Clausen.
Senator Clausen votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Eaton.
Senator Eaton votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Frentz.
Senator Frentz votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Isaacson.
Senator Isaacson votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Klein.
Senator Klein votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Lane.
Senator Lane votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Latz.
Senator Latz votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Little.
Senator Little votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Newton.
Senator Newton votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Rest.
Senator Rest votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Sparks.
Senator Sparks votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Torres Ray.
Senator Torres Ray votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Wickland.
Senator Wickland votes aye. I will now call on Senator Gazelka to report the votes of the members voting under Rule 40.7. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Bruce Anderson votes aye.
Senator Anderson B. votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Chamberlain votes aye.
Senator Chamberlain votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Dames votes aye.
Senator Dames votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Eichhorn votes aye.
Senator Eichhorn votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Ingebretson votes aye.
Senator Ingebretson votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Newman votes aye.
Senator Newman votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Pratt votes aye.
Senator Pratt votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Senjum votes aye.
Senator Senjum votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Westrom votes aye.
Senator Westrom votes aye. All members having voted who have the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 66 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Members, the next bill up for consideration is number 37 on general orders, Senate File 1805, Senator Hall.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate File 1805 is, I think for some people, taken back that 16 and 17-year-olds are not able to mow lawns and or work for businesses that would have them mow lawns. But that's the way the state law states right now, that no minor can be employed using in a hazardous occupation, which is the ruling, Minnesota ruling that lawn care is a hazardous occupation. So Senate File 05, let me start out by saying thank you to the co-authors, Senators Anderson B., Senator Bigham, Senator Pratt, and Senator Johnson. Our staff, we have a great staff that helped put this together. And our stakeholders, I want to thank them, the Minnesota Nursery and Landscaping, the Minnesota Golf Course Superintendents Association, and Hospitality Minnesota. Also, we did some good work, discussion, and took care of concerns. I want to say how much I appreciate the latitude that Commissioner Lepink gave to us, and that's how we ended up with this good bill. So, Senate File 1805 allows 16 and 17-year-olds to be employed and to operate lawn care equipment. Section 1 of the bill sets standards for lawn care equipment by the American National Standards Institute, the Outdoor Power Equipment Institute, and it states that minors must be trained and wear protective equipment at all times. And there's a list of that in the bill. Mr. President, I would like at this point to move the A6 amendment.
Senator Hall offers the A6 amendment. The Secretary will report the amendment.
Senator Hall moves to amend Senate File Number 1805 as follows. Page 1 after line 18, insert. This is the A6 amendment.
To the amendment, Senator Hall.
Thank you, Mr. President. The A6 amendment goes further on the bill after line 118, and it specifies that the employer must first off follow the rules of operation recommended by the manufacturer. Safety equipment must be in place and operational on all equipment, and that 16 and 17-year-olds may only, and this is very important, may only be directly employed to do lawn care by 4 different types of employers. The first one is golf courses, second being resorts, third, municipalities, and the fourth, rental property owners. So I want to make note of that again, if I may, members, that minors are not allowed to work for lawn care businesses. They must be directly employed by golf courses, resorts, municipalities, or rental property owners. With that, I would move the A6 amendment.
Members, any further discussion on the A6 amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, say no. We will take a brief pause to gather the votes of the members in alternate locations. Receiving a sufficient number of votes, the motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. Members, we're back on Senate File 1805. Any further discussion on Senate File 1805 as amended? Any further discussion? The Secretary will give Senate File 1805 its third reading.
Senate File Number 1805, a bill for an act relating to youth employment.
Third reading. Members, we're on final discussion of Senate File 1805. I have Senator Abler followed by Senator Bigham. Senator Abler.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the chance to comment on this. Is actually a great bill. I think going forward, we're going to need a lot more flexibility like this and allowing people to work and even trying to help them just make it through this really hard time. And so I was just kind of, I don't know why I thought about this bill so much, Senator Hall. We talked about it yesterday, and it's just such a novel little bill. So you think about some 16-year-old who's going to make $12, and maybe over the course of a summer he'll make $3,000, $4,000. She will, perhaps, as she gets to work for a golf course or whatever. And that used to be a small amount of money. And but actually, compared to some of the places that are closed on Main Street, that's more that they've made since March. And they're really wondering how they're going to make it. And so some of them actually might want to get their kids doing some of this so they can actually help pay their mortgage. And yesterday, but I think these small amounts of help could be very useful. Yesterday, we had the budget update showing a $4 billion swing. I think that is extremely optimistic. I'm not suggesting that people didn't do the math, but they have no idea what's happening. I can tell you, Senator Hall, ideas like this are going to be, as we think of 50 more ways to be flexible, to dispense with some rules that just don't make sense, are going to make all the difference in the world. And as we sit here, and those of us who are fortunate to come back, well, we'll be here in the summer, Mr. President, I guess, anyway, but as we face the real budget number in November and then the real number in February, I think it's going to be a frightening one. And it's going to be $5, $6, $7 billion we're going to have to address. And that just kind of terrifies me. And so good news is landscapers are open and some golf courses can take these young people to do the work. But I want to caution you, Mr. President and members, as I listen to my constituents, there is a great move towards civil disobedience. And so I don't know how you civilly disobey if you're a 16-year-old wanting to go work for a golf course, but there are people that are just about to open up anyway. And I'm very concerned as we move forward about the effects of that. Dentists are allowed to open, but hair salons are not. I just tell you, I don't know that they're involved in the landscaping golf course business, but 4 of my businesses in Anoka told me today that they're closing. And so as we look at ways to get through this time, like Senator Hall's great idea to let young people have a chance, because many of them are underemployed anyway, just in minority groups and others. We have got our hands full, Mr. President, and it's just not a long walk to the brink for a lot of these folks, Mr. President. And so, Senator Hall, thanks for bringing this forward, and thank you, Mr. President.
Final discussion on the bill, Senator Bingham, followed by Senator Cohn. Senator Bingham.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to vote for Senate File 1805. I'm actually a co-author on the bill. 16 and 17-year-olds mowing lawns to save money for college or a car is a good thing. And Mr. President, I believe many of us on the floor did the same thing growing up. Now, when we have so many adults unemployed, I question the timing of why the majority would bring this forward. However, I'm also noticing a trend, Mr. President. This is the second bill that allows for 16 and 17-year-olds to work in a specific industry. I sure hope this isn't a slippery slope, Mr. President. The amendment added to this bill helps tighten the scope down to lawn care. I would not want this legislation or the prior legislation to be a path allowing children onto construction work sites. Today it's lawnmowers and weed whippers. Tomorrow it might be bobcats and front loaders, Mr. President. The legislature in the future ought to look at discussing minors in the workforce. And, workers on these sites go through extensive occupational training. They go through safety training. They utilize protective equipment to do the job safely and to complete a job safely. And that's the important part. We would not want to see profits put ahead of safety on the job. And we also need to make sure that we are enforcing child labor laws. And so I hope in the future we can have a broader discussion about this, because it seems like this is kind of an intentional path. And so I hope we do, as a body, have a discussion, Mr. President. Thank you.
Final discussion on the bill, Senator Cohn.
Mr. President, I don't want to continue this indefinitely. We've listened to Senator Abler, and I agree with Senator Abler in terms of the need to reopen the state. The question is how, when, why. I would just like to point out 2 things to members as we consider legislation, as we consider where the state is. For whatever it's worth, yesterday the survey research poll showed that 82% of the people in the state of Minnesota supported how Governor Walz is handling this matter. 16% of the people in Minnesota opposed how Governor Walz is handling what is going on. Second, if members noted the news nationally that there is an administration report that, of course, was not released but was leaked, an administration report, national administration report, making it clear, and this excludes the month of May, that starting in June, the expectation is there will be 3,000 deaths a day in the United States of America. Do the arithmetic. That's 90,000 deaths in the month of June, on top of the approximately 75,000 folks who have died up to this point, coupled with the people who would die in the month of May. That far exceeds the deaths in the combination of the Korean War and the Vietnam War. And if this continues for the summer, as every public health expert, every epidemiologist expert in this country makes clear, it's going to continue through the summer and into the fall, there's every chance we'll exceed the number of deaths from World War II.
Final discussion on the bill, Senator Abler.
Well, thank you. And I just, since we're in this discussion, I really appreciate Senator Cohen. I have considered him to be a voice of reason. And I have not always voted with him when I thought I might have. And there's a couple times when I should have voted differently based on his counsel. And I think his voice will be missed in this chamber. He has served admirably for a long time. And actually, I agree with him about our need to be prudent and careful. And I want to make it clear, I support the governor's work. I support him in so many parts. I can't even list all the parts. He's working on the testing. He's working on hospital capacity. But there are some things that just don't make sense to me and the average citizen. My only plea these 10 times has been, can we open places that are just as safe or safer than Target? Drive to Menards. You can't park in the lot. They have a limit. But these little stores on Main Street, the hair salons being more safe than dentists, that's all I'm saying. And so I think that Senator Cohen and I agree a great deal. And I think that together we can get this squared away in a safe way, Mr. President. So I just wanted to emphasize that I think we agree on that, and I think that we're prudent in that direction. Thank you.
Just a reminder, members, we're on Senate File 1805 as amended. Final discussion. Senator Hayden.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I resisted interrupting Senator Abler under the Senate rules that talk about your comments should be to the debate or the amendment in front of us. And so, Mr. President, I would hope that in the future, as we walk through the debate on each bill and amendment, that we would continue to focus on the amendment at hand. And I, though appreciate Senator Abler's comments and even Senator Cohen, I do think that they are starting to become far afoot of what's in front of us. So, Mr. President, I resisted interrupting Senator Abler because I have a lot of respect for him, but I would hope that we could continue to stay focused at the business at hand.
Senator Hayden, point well taken. Members, please keep that in mind. We're on final discussion, as I mentioned, on Senate File 1805 as amended. Senator Hall.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for all of those kind words on the bill. I do want to remind folks that 16-year-olds right now can drive a car, and they can drive tractor, and I'm sure outstate they're doing all kinds of lawn care on their farms. And I appreciate the comments that went outside of the scope of this bill because we live in a day that's more unusual than we've probably ever had, at least in my lifetime. And so I understand the reasons that people want to continue to stand up for what they believe is happening or not happening these days. And in that frame, I do want to say, I think we all care about our society and what's happening. I certainly believe that the governor is in a hard spot. And I'm not in his shoes. But what I do know is that I want a safe and free society. And there are some things that we see that seem to be misjustices. We don't understand, and so clarification would help. For me, certainly the idea that the necessity to have an abortion is hard for me to swallow, but that's just where it is. And so, or some businesses that are one-on-one.
Mr. President, point of order.
I would like to
Senator
see.
Hayden, for what reason do you rise?
Well, Mr. President, I think we just addressed the Senate Rule 36.2 that debate should be directed to the bill that's at hand. It appears that Senator Hall, after advice from me 5 minutes ago, is now going far afoot of the bill that's in front of us.
Members, a final reminder, please keep your comments to the bill. We're on Senate File 1805 as amended. Final discussion. Senator Hall.
So thank you, Senator Hayden, for that reminder. We will try to stick to the bill and continue with a safe and free society. So I would move Senate File 1805 as amended.
Members, we are on final passage of Senate File 1805 as amended. Seeing no further discussion, the Secretary will take the roll. Members in the retiring room, please come to the chamber and vote. Retiring room. Members in room 303, please make your way down to the chamber to vote. And while they're on their way down, members in the president's office, please come to the chamber and vote. Room 303 and members in the president's office. Members in room 323, please come down to the chamber and vote. While they're on their way down, members in room 237, please come to the chamber and vote. And members in room 206, please come to the chamber and vote. Room 206. I will now call on Senator Kent to report the votes of the members voting under Rule 40.7. Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report aye for Senator Carlson.
Senator Carlson votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Clausen.
Senator Clausen votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Eaton.
Senator Eaton votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Frentz.
Senator Frentz votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Isaacson.
Senator Isaacson votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Klein.
Senator Klein votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Lane.
Senator Lane votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Latz.
Senator Latz votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Little.
Senator Little votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Newton.
Senator Newton votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Rest.
Senator Rest votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Sparks.
Senator Sparks votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Torres Ray.
Senator Torres Ray votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Wickland.
Senator Wickland votes aye. I'll now call on Senator Benson to report the votes of the members voting under Rule 40.7. Senator Benson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Anderson B. votes aye.
Senator Anderson B. votes aye. Senator Benson.
Senator Chamberlain votes aye.
Senator Chamberlain votes aye. Senator Benson.
Senator Dames votes aye.
Senator Dames votes aye. Senator Benson.
Senator Eichhorn votes aye.
Senator Eichhorn votes aye. Senator Benson.
Senator Ingebretson votes aye.
Senator Ingebretson votes aye. Senator Benson.
Senator Newman votes aye.
Senator Newman votes aye. Senator Benson.
Senator Pratt votes aye.
Senator Pratt votes aye. Senator Benson.
Senator Senjum votes aye.
Senator Senjum votes aye. Senator Benson.
Senator Westrom votes aye.
Senator Westrom votes aye. Does that complete your vote, Senator Benson?
That completes my votes, Mr. President.
All members having voted who have the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 66 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Members, the next bill up for consideration is number 69 on general orders, Senate File 3800. Senator Curran.
Thank you, Mr. President. Proud to bring Senate File 3800 to the floor. What this bill does is really modernizing our electronic funds transfer policies and statutes as it relates to goods and services. This bill would update our money transmission statutes. It's with the technology changes, so the ways of consumers and merchants transmit funds. Companies like PayPal, MoneyGram, and Western Union, to name a few, have delivery of funds requirements in Minnesota. This bill would revise that requirement under certain circumstances with the goal to enhance consumer protections. These revisions would follow licensed transmitters, would allow licensed transmitters to hold funds for 3 separate reasons. Today, a money transfer business is bound by our electronic funds transfer policies. Traditionally, those policies have been focused on when the actual transmission was the movement of funds, the sole purpose of that transaction. Today, many different money transfer vehicles in the electronic form have evolved outside of our traditional banking channels and outside of our traditional merchant processing channels. If you're familiar with the world of a credit card, a consumer has protections built into that credit card transaction against the seller or the provider of the service. This expands the capabilities and allows for those emerging money transfer vehicles that exist and inserts many different consumer protections laws to help against fraud and insufficient service or those types of recourses that you have in all other money transfer services today. So the 3 exceptions to the existing money transfer law is, and they're required to move those funds within 5 days, is the exception to that is when the sender requests that it be held, and again, the sender is the consumer. When the sender has a reasonable belief that a reasonable basis to believe that a crime or a violation of law is occurring, that particular case with the emergence of electronic commerce, fraud can be perpetuated extremely fast, and those money transmitters are going to be the first to be able to identify that to protect consumers. The third exception is when transmission is for goods and services. Additionally, it states that licensed transmitters must spell out in the merchant agreements what conditions are that allow them to hold funds longer than 5 days. This bill also states that money transmitters must refund to customers all monies received within 10 days of the request of a refund. And members, we've worked with the Minnesota Department of Commerce on this bill. We also have support from the Legal Aid Minnesota and the Electronic Transaction Association. And so with that, Mr. President, I stand for questions.
Discussion on Senate File 3800. Seeing none, the Secretary will give Senate File 3800 its 3rd reading.
Senate File number 3800, a bill for an act relating to commerce.
3rd reading. Members, any final discussion on the bill? We're on final passage of Senate File 3800. Seeing no further discussion, the Secretary will take the roll. Members in the retiring room, please come to the chamber and vote. Members in the retiring room. Members in room 303, please make your way down to the chamber to vote. Members in the President's office, please come to the chamber and vote. President's office, please come to the chamber and vote.
Somebody wanted to challenge or something?
Earlier, I think there was.
Oh, then it's.
Members in room 323, please make your way down to the chamber to vote. Members in room 237, please come to the chamber and vote. And members in room 206, please come to the chamber and vote.
Hey, Paul, don't ever tell him I didn't listen to him. I was trying to bail, and he said, could you please stay here? So I took
He's listening. His listen
listened.
is, he's listening.
I stayed.
Crowded here.
Hoping for a second moment.
Crowds.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you.
I will now call on Senator Kent to report the votes of the members voting remotely under Rule 40.7. Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report aye for Senator Carlson.
Senator Carlson votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Clausen.
Senator Clausen votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Eaton.
Senator Eaton votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Frentz.
Senator Frentz votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Isaacson.
Senator Isaacson votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Klein.
Senator Klein votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Lane.
Senator Lane votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Latz.
Senator Latz votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Little.
Senator Little votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Newton.
Senator Newton votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Rest.
Senator Rest votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Sparks.
Senator Sparks votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Torres Ray.
Senator Torres Ray votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Wickland.
Senator Wickland votes aye. I'll now call on Senator Benson to report the votes of the members voting under Rule 40.7. Senator Benson.
Mr. President, Senator Anderson B. votes aye.
Senator Anderson B. votes aye. Senator Benson.
Senator Chamberlain votes aye.
Senator Chamberlain votes aye. Senator Benson.
Senator Dames votes aye.
Senator Dames votes aye. Senator Benson.
Senator Eichhorn votes aye.
Senator Eichhorn votes aye. Senator Benson.
Senator Ingebretson votes aye.
Senator Ingebretson votes aye. Senator Benson.
Senator Newman votes aye.
Senator Newman votes aye. Senator Benson.
Senator Pratt votes aye.
Senator Pratt votes aye. Senator Benson.
Senator Senjum votes aye.
Senator Senjum votes aye. Senator Benson.
Senator Westrom votes aye.
Senator Westrom votes aye. All members having voted who have the desire to vote, The Secretary will close the roll. There being 66 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Members, the next bill up for consideration is number 36 on general orders, House File 745. This is a Senator Pappas bill, and just a note for the members that we are working off the unofficial engrossment of House File 745. Senator Pappas.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, Mr. Members. I appreciate the opportunity to present House File 745. I'm going to start out by just reading a little statement from one of our Minnesota child brides. I was 15 years old when I first met Dave, who was 21. We went on a couple dates before I became pregnant. 3 months later, we were married because Dave would have gone to jail for what had happened, and I was told that this is just the way it has to be. I had just finished grade 9 and did not get to go back to school since I was expected to stay at home with my son. By the time I was 19, I had 3 kids, and when I turned 20, Dave decided the children were too much work, and he left. Mr. President and members, this is the case with a lot of our child brides, and people are often surprised to hear that we still do allow child marriage in the United States, as countries around the world are tightening up on the marriage age and settling on age 18. But in Minnesota, we still allow individuals who are 16 or 17, under the age of 18, they can be married with permission from both their parents and from the court. And what this bill would do, it would close that loophole. The reason is, members, that girls who marry as children, compared to those who marry at 18 or older, are 3 times more likely to be beaten by their spouses. They're 31% more likely to live in poverty. They're 50% more likely to drop out of high school. They're 23% more likely to have a heart attack, diabetes, cancer, stroke, and psychiatric disorders. They're 50% more likely to be divorced. In reality, a married child cannot get a divorce, cannot rent an apartment, cannot buy or rent a car, cannot get health care or check into a hospital, cannot open a bank account, does not have access to an inheritance, cannot get a credit card, cannot even stay at a battered women's shelter. A married child cannot help herself or her children. In conclusion, members, I'd just like you to hear from another Minnesota child bride. This is Pat's story. I was raised in a family where abuse and neglect were normal. As a result, I was severely depressed, and at the age of 12, I attempted suicide. I called the local crisis hotline and spoke to a man who was a third-year missionary training student. That night, he came to the ER and kept in touch with my parents. He convinced them that he could provide counseling to me and that I didn't need the antidepressants that the doctor had prescribed. I saw him twice a week for counseling. Later that summer, his apartment building caught fire, and he convinced my parents to let him move into their basement. He immediately began molesting me. I became pregnant right before I turned 14. My parents said I could only keep my child if I married him. I was also told that I had brought shame to my family. So we went on a road trip so I could be married off. We first stopped in Kentucky, and when the judge refused to do the ceremony due to my age, we drove on to Alabama. There, a judge had no problem with the situation, and in a 6-minute ceremony, I was married to the 28-year-old pedophile who had abused me. Members, there's more that could be said, but I certainly am very appreciative that we have the bill before us this year, and I would respectfully request everyone's vote. Thank you.
Discussion on House File 745, Senator Herr.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Sandy Pappas, for bringing this bill forth. And it's a good bill. It will restrict abusive relationship. Being that I'm a layman senator and represent folks that majority use layman language and multicultural communities, this bill is short, but when I read the bill, it's quite complex. You know, even one clause alone is quite complex. So I just want clarity and maybe a little bit more explanation so that folks that I represent are clear with the language that are in the bill. And I want to be efficient with my time, so I just have 2 points that I like clarification from Senator Sandy Pappas.
Senator, are you asking Senator Pappas to yield to these questions?
I'd like to
Senator
ask,
Pappas
Senator
will yield.
Pappas to yield.
Senator Herr.
Yes. I want to make sure that this bill does not retroact to make past legal marriage illegal after the bill is enacted. That will be my first point. The second point is in a formal question is that what about couples who move from other state or other country that may be new to our culture and our laws here and was married legally under their jurisdiction? Will this bill still recognize their marriage as legal?
Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Senator Herr, for those questions, Mr. President and Senator Herr. If someone was married as a child bride, say 10 years ago, this law will not void their marriage. That would be chaotic. If someone gets married to a couple in another state or another country and one or both are below the age of 18, we will recognize that marriage. Only if you are a Minnesota resident, one of them is a Minnesota resident, and you purposely go to another state to avoid our law after August 1st, that marriage will not be recognized.
Thank you, Senator
Further
Pappas.
discussion. Senator Herr.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Pappas, for the clarification, and thank you, Mr. President, for the time.
Further discussion on House File 745. Senator Hall.
Thank you, Mr. President. Listening to those stories, Senator Pappas, puts a knot in my stomach. It just makes me sick that those things happen, but I know they do. At first glance, I wanted to say people have a right to get married when they want to. And as I chewed on it, I started to think about, was I ready to get married at 22 when Valerie and I met? And we did get married, and okay, 46 years later, we're still here, but boy, was I really ready? Even at 22, it's hard to imagine that I was really ready. So I don't think this is out of line. I think it's very reasonable. And I think for all the reasons that Senator Pappas added there, I think this is a good bill. And, you know, if you want to get married younger, that's a great desire to be married. But there's nothing wrong with waiting and in 18 or even older. But we'll set it at 18. Thank you, Senator Pappas.
Members, any final discussion or any further discussion on House File 745? Seeing none, the Secretary will give House File 745 its third reading.
House File Number 745, a bill for an act relating to marriage.
Third reading. Now we're on final discussion. Final discussion for House File 745. We're on final passage of House File 745. Seeing no further discussion, the Secretary will take the roll. Members in the retiring room, please come to the chamber and vote. Retiring room.
Yeah, I hear you. I remember that. I remember attending that event at Colma High School. I remember you were there.
So I was doing the not a good interpreter either. He wouldn't be a good interpreter, especially when he was responding to everything.
Members in room 303, room 303, please come down to the chamber and vote. Members in the president's office, please come to the chamber and vote.
Give them the authority to do legal marriages, religious folks and others. And the concern of the other side's bill was, the concern was these folks, these are 15-year-old pressure on the elder organizations.
As far as I know, Mayor.
By some of that generation of if we give them the state's authority to be some state marriages, in addition to the other one, make them to some of the women in the home, or some of the younger women are saying this is more pressure on us, and we have that board, the state is behind their side of this. So I hope that we didn't touch it then, and I mean it's 15 years ago, and you know how much things have changed in health. I mean, it's early marriage still exists. Yeah, I'm sure.
Members in room 323, please come down to the chamber and vote. Members in room 237, please come to the chamber and vote. Members in room 206, please come to the chamber and vote.
He became a millionaire. What? He became a millionaire. Really?
He's still bragging about it. He doesn't come out and involve with me much.
Now me, oops. Now me, she moved to Washington for a while. Is she back?
With the long legislators. So, yeah. I don't know whether because she left.
Okay, I just was curious because she was so involved in Zion got the shop. He was kind of very.
He decided very close to David Neal. And so it looks like he took a risk on some investment in homes of the state. So having a assistant. So his wife that went very well. So
But he's still in St. Paul area?
in Florida now.
Oh.
So he sold that. Become very well off.
Oh.
But then when you are well off, you don't
pay attention.
You don't hang around with people like anymore.
We don't come when they get money.
But
Anyway.
I still see him on Facebook every now and then teaching people how to become a millionaire.
Members in room 206, please come to the chamber and vote.
She was the first.
Well, my memory is. What? Really? Yeah, she was here. Yeah, okay. I thought it was the other way around.
I did that documentary on her.
Members, we are under a roll call vote. Please take your discussions outside the chamber. Members, we're under a roll call vote. I will now call on Senator Kent to report the votes of the members voting under Rule 40.7. Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report aye for Senator Carlson.
Senator Carlson votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Clausen.
Senator Clausen votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Eaton.
Senator Eaton votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Frentz.
Senator Frentz votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Isaacson.
Senator Isaacson votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Klein.
Senator Klein votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Lane.
Senator Lane votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Latz.
Senator Latz votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Little.
Senator Little votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Newton.
Senator Newton votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Rest.
Senator Rest votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Sparks.
Senator Sparks votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Torres Ray.
Senator Torres Ray votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Wickland.
Senator Wickland votes aye. I'll now call on Senator Gazelka to report the votes of the members voting under Rule 40.7. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Bruce Anderson votes aye.
Senator Anderson B. votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Chamberlain votes aye.
Senator Chamberlain votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Dames votes aye.
Senator Dames votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Eichhorn votes aye.
Senator Eichhorn votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Ingebretson votes aye.
Senator Ingebretson votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Newman votes aye.
Senator Newman votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Pratt votes aye.
Senator Pratt votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Senjum votes aye.
Senator Senjum votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
Senator Westrom votes aye.
Senator Westrom votes aye. All members having voted who have the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 66 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Members remaining under motions and resolutions, we're going to start working off an addendum to the Senate agenda. Moving to the fifth order of business, reports of committees. Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, I move the committee reports printed in the addendum be adopted.
On the adoption of the committee reports, all those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. We'll take a brief pause to gather the votes of the members in alternate locations. Receiving a sufficient number of aye votes, the motion prevails. Continuing under motions and resolutions, we'll move to the sixth order of business, second reading of Senate bills. The Secretary will read the Senate file numbers.
Senate file numbers 3560, 4525, 4499, 3298, 3739, and 3255.
These Senate files are given their second reading. Remaining under motions and resolutions, we'll move to the seventh order of business, second reading of House bills. The Secretary will read the House file number.
House file number 2542.
Second reading. Remaining under motions and resolutions, we'll move to the 13th order of business. Without objection, Senator Rosen will be excused from today's session. Announcements of Senate interest, Senator Bigham.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to make the body aware of the passing of a former senator. On behalf of Senator Klein and I, we want to announce the passing of former State Senator Roland Glevy. This is from his obituary that was published this weekend, that he's a man of deep faith and deep love for his wife and family. Roland is a 1951 graduate of South St. Paul High School, and in 1966 was elected state senator for Northern Dakota County. Obviously, that includes South St. Paul, and was re-elected in 1970. In 1993, Roland started the Roadwear Inc. with his two sons, Scott and Kelton, and Richard King. He did retire from that in 2013, and Roland Glevy was married to Joan Brosoit of South St. Paul in 1953, and we want to offer our condolences and prayers to his family and his children, who are Ray, Luann, Scott, Barbara, Kelton, and his 28 grand and great-grandchildren. And members, if you are interested, an announcement about his celebration of life will be in the future. But, Mr. President, I would ask for a moment of silence to acknowledge Roland Glevy.
Members, please rise for a moment of silence. Thank you, members. Further announcements of Senate interest. Senator Cohn.
Mr. President, would Senator Gazelka yield?
Senator Gazelka will yield. Senator Cohn.
So, Mr. President, Senator Gazelka, yesterday we had the release of the revised budget projection, not a forecast. And I will note that last week we passed a tax bill that spent $317 million of general fund revenue. Senator Bach and I discussed this on the floor and pointed out to members the difficulty we were going to face with yesterday's projection. We also passed legislation of Senator Westrom that was $30 million out of general fund, albeit language in the bill that said if federal money is appropriate for Senator Westrom's legislation, that the federal money would pay for it. So, Mr. President, Senator Gazelka, I'm wondering how many other bills spending general fund dollars are going to be in front of the Senate this session.
Senator Gazelka.
Thank you, Mr. President, members, and Senator Cohn. I don't know that there's very many left, and I think bringing up the budget projection, I think, is really important for us to have that conversation, that in just a couple of months, not even a couple of months, it flipped $4 billion down. And so we are trying to watch where are we going. I know that there's some resources that the federal funds that came in can be applied for, but it's not the full $2 billion. It's something like $500 million. So as we come to the finish line, we will look at the tax bill. We will look at the size of the bonding bill. We'll look at the state contracts and whether we should approve them as is or ask for a modification. So it is important that we look at that and accept the realities of the fact that we had a big downturn.
Further announcements. Senator Cohn.
Mr. President, if you'll allow me to respond to Senator Gazelka, if that would be okay.
Senator Cohn.
Mr. President, members, I guess in the last several years, I've played the role of Cassandra on the Senate floor, talking about what is going to happen and some of the negative impacts of what we were doing. Senator Bach and I both talked about that in 2017, concerns that the legislation we were passing was simply going to spend too much money. The combination of some of the expenditures, general fund expenditures, and the tax expenditures. Last year we talked about, Senator Bach and I talked about the utilization of almost $500 million from the budget reserve. Now members should understand, and Senator Bach and I talked about this last week, that that money is taken out of the reserve, I believe, July 1st of 2022. Well, that money will be long gone, which means that the deficit for the next biennium will be an additional $491 million on top of everything else. But, Mr. President, members, what I hope folks will do, and for folks who are listening on the telephone, is read the interim budget projection from MMB. All the years I've been here, what members do, with the exception of a few of us, is we hear the budget forecast. Oh, we got $1 billion to spend. We got $2 billion to spend. And everybody then determines what they'd like to do, either by way of expenditure or tax expenditure. Mr. President and members, read this report, because if you read it, it's going to get much, much, much worse before it gets better. The IHS numbers on which Dr. Klimakidis based her projection make it clear that they didn't have the entirety of the income tax projections because of the delay in payments, nor the sales tax collections because of the delay in the collections. The report goes until the end of March, the first quarter. You know, I mentioned a few minutes ago, just listen to what's going on nationally, because the COVID crisis is not going to go away. It is not going to disappear during the summer. The federal report projection is for 3,000 deaths a day during the month of June, which would take us until well into that second quarter. It's not going to go away. And so what we saw yesterday with the budget projection, to use the cliche, is simply the tip of the iceberg. It might be a little bit more than a tip, but there's a lot of the iceberg left to slam into. And I've been here long enough to have gone through good times and bad times. Those of us who've been here for quite a while, Senator Pappas, Senator Bach, can remember in the latter part of the 90s when Commissioner Wheelock said we have a boatload of money, and that was for the projection, the forecast in the second year of the biennium. There's not going to be any boatload of money. Senator Gazelka talked about the federal money that's coming up to this point, and I will suggest that, as I understand it, the federal money provided up to this time is only allowed for COVID expenditures, not for the coverage of a deficit. Now, some talk out of Washington that the next appropriation, whenever it might happen, if it might happen, might actually allow states and local governments to use money for their deficit. That hasn't happened yet. It hasn't passed. And if you look at what takes place in D.C. over the last number of years, it would be probably a difficult bet to make. And we'd have no idea when it might happen. But let me just also ask you, in looking at, and please read this, don't just look at the numbers as presented in the slideshow yesterday. Read the budget projection document. And also, members, I would ask you to pay particular attention to the language that is in here from the Council of Economic Advisors statement. And on the phone call, Senator Rosen was present on that phone call. On the phone call with Dr. Klimakidis, I believe were 8 of the 9 economists, the state economists. And they emphasize that IHS now expects a 3-quarter recession. That means, based on what we have right now, is that this will be over, end of July or so. But council members note that the outlook for the U.S. economy is exceptionally uncertain and suggests that the outcomes will depend critically on the pandemic's course, the prospects for an effective vaccine, which will not happen for quite a while, and it goes on through the list. And it says this economic forecast, referring to IHS, carries an extraordinary amount of risk. We should expect the economic outlook to remain volatile and unpredictable for some time. It also indicates that most council members believe that a slower recovery is more likely than IHS's fairly rapid return to economic growth. It also emphasizes the lag in terms of reporting of revenue. Also indicates that the IHS reports indicates that the number of new cases gradually diminishes to 0 by June. Members, as I mentioned, some of us have seen very good times and bad times. Nothing will compare to this. And as we make decisions for the rest of this session, and whenever we come back in special session this year, this will be as difficult as anybody has ever seen. Please keep that in mind as decisions are being made.
Further announcements, Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, Senator Cohen and members, frankly, that is very good advice. I said right away when this was happening that we have to tighten our belt and we should only focus on the emergency of COVID, getting our economy back on track, which is something that all of us should be mindful when government tinkers with the economy, that it's just not that easy to get back on track. And then thirdly, focus on the fact that next year is going to be very, very difficult and that we're going to have a huge deficit. And so as we're moving forward, how we spend money is a big deal. And that we passed a tax bill, but most of it, frankly, was focused on that second thing that I brought up, which how do we stimulate the small business owners so that they don't fail, so they keep the employees that we need to pay the revenue that we need to cover the bills that the state has. And so, without a doubt, I think your words are worth heeding. I think some of the people that have been around here a long time, Senator Limmer, Senator Bach, and others, are going to play a very important role in helping us navigate through this. Senator Cohen, you've retired, but feel free to come back and give Bach and Senator Kent advice, because this will be extremely difficult, and which is the other reason why I've been talking about we should not approve the state contracts. I hope the governor and his folks work with our great state employees to say last year's raise we should keep, this year's raise we should not do. And you see that the governor did a hiring freeze. The Senate yesterday, we froze all salaries. I hate to do that for our staff, nonpartisan, partisan. We have amazing staff, but we are freezing right now because we know that moving forward, I believe, as you do, that it will be much worse than where we're at right now. And so as we're moving through this, we'll look at the tax bill as we negotiate to the end. We'll look at the size of the bonding bill. We'll look at the state contracts. And then the other thing is I want to make sure that we have legislative oversight over those federal dollars coming in so that we all have input on that. But your words are well taken.
Further announcements of Senate interest, Senator Bach.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Just a suggestion to the Majority Leader. I think it would be wise for the legislative leaders to have a conversation with the governor, considering the circumstances the state budget is in, and come back with some suggestions for a special session to undo some of the appropriations that were done in this current budget cycle. We clearly are not going to have money to sustain all the spending that we approved this time last year. And the sooner we get our arms around that, what things we can reduce, I think the better off we will be next winter when it appears we will not have enough money to live up to the commitments that we made, and we'll have a very narrow window of time left in order to address that. So I think getting at it now, when we're almost a year away from the end of the biennium, is much easier than waiting till next session when there's only a few months left to the end of the biennium. So what I know about tax policy is you just can't turn taxes on and off, even if you want to. It takes time to get the new revenue into the system. So we're not going to resolve the problem this time next year by trying to raise revenue and dig our way out of it. We have a significant problem in this current biennium. So, Mr. Majority Leader, I just would suggest that you and the other leadership sit down with the governor and talk about what is it we did last year that we now can pause on to try and make the job for the next legislature a little bit easier. It is not a pretty sight to end a biennium and hand off to a brand new legislature next January a big problem. So I think, in all fairness to those newly elected members that are going to be coming here, let's do something to make some effort. We're not going to balance the books, but let's at least make it something so they're able to navigate the challenge that lies in front of them. Senator Cohen is right. The challenges, the economic challenges are severe. The state revenue challenges are severe. Let's start assessing what it is we can unwind from what we did last year. That's my suggestion, Mr. Leader.
Members, any further announcements of Senate interest? Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, I move the Senate do now adjourn until Thursday, May 7th at 11 a.m.
Senator Gazelka moves that the Senate do now adjourn until Thursday, May 7th, 2020 at 11 a.m. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Senate is adjourned.